Hey adventurers, so today's going to be a top 10 video. I make these occasionally. This one's going to be a little bit different though because it's specifically fantasy book titles. And I had to impose some rules upon myself because it just got out of hand really quick, and trying to narrow it down to actually my top 10 was very difficult. And so how I ended up narrowing it down was it had to be something that I physically owned, something that I'd read, so owned and read. Let's see. I've read it, it's on my shelves. Those are the two big ones. And then if there was ever any that there were multiple in the same series that I really like the titles of, I stuck those in the honorable mentions. I'll go through those real quick. So my honorable mentions are Fellowship of the Ring and Return of the King. I think both of those are great titles. Mistborn: The Final Empire, as well as The Hero of Ages, as well as The Alloy of Law and Shadows of Self. So those four at least are all ones that I think are great titles. Great fantasy book titles. Then we've got The Way of Kings and Rhythm of War, so those are both book titles in the same series that I think are great titles, great fantasy book titles. And so because they're in the same series, I'm just not going to make them compete, and I'm just going to choose one. Then we've got some in Wheel of Time. The Eye of the World, of course, I think is a great book title, even though the book doesn't really have that much to do with the Eye of the World. It does, but you don't get to the Eye of the World until the very end of the book. That's the way it is. Dragon Reborn, I think, is a good fantasy book title. Winter's Heart is a good fantasy book title. Several other, I haven't read Winter's Heart yet, so that one doesn't even count, couldn't even count, but there's a whole bunch of them that I think are really good book titles. Anyways, we will now go from 10 to 1 on this list, and the first one, number 10, I kind of broke my rules a little bit because I think it's a great book title, but there's two books that have this book title. One of them I have read and don't physically own, the other one I haven't read but do physically own. And so I'm kind of cheating, and because I think it's actually a really good book title, I'm still going to use it. And anyways, that is The Winter King. The two books that I've read, there's The Winter King by Bernard Cornwell and then The Winter King by Christine Cohen. Two very different stories. One is Arthurian, one is not. One is Arthurian, one is Christian fantasy. Good book. I enjoyed the book quite a bit. I wish that it would have gone a little bit harder into the atmosphere though. Other than that, and it being I'm not being the target audience for the writing style. Other than those two things, I actually really enjoyed the book. As far as Bernard Cornwell's The Winter King goes, I haven't read it yet, and so I can't comment on it, but I still think the title is a really good title. I think here's the problem. If you put winter in your title, or snow or ice or something, I'm probably gonna like your title. I think that's the only one in this series that has that, so hopefully it won't become too big of an issue, or in this video that I have listed that has snow or ice or anything like that in the title. Anyways, we're going to continue on. The next one that I have on the list is also an Arthurian, and that is Le Morte d'Arthur by Sir Thomas Malory. I don't know that I'm pronouncing that right. Probably not, because I'm not French. Anyways, I like this book. I think the book is fantastic. I love the title. Obviously it spoils what the book is going to be. It's The Death of Arthur, but knowing that it's kind of the culmination and canonization in some ways of the Arthurian mythos, I think that it's a great title. It's a very powerful title, and I think it works really well for the story that's being told, because you can, from basically page 1, see how it's leading up to the death of Arthur. And so yeah, I like this title. I think it's a good fantasy book title. Then we have Dawn of Wonder by Jonathan Renshaw. This is a book that I have talked about extensively. I'm not going to talk much about the book, but I love the book. I think the title is very good, Dawn of Wonder. Part of why I like it is because just the concept of wonder, and then it just coming up, it being that first light, that first peak of the day, that the first light of the new day, and all that kind of stuff, that being wonder just coming over the horizon, and you just starting to get a glimpse of it. That whole concept, that whole idea, I think is really well captured in this book title, this Dawn of Wonder as a book title, and I'm very excited to see where the following books in the series go, as we have had an update on book 2, or from Renshaw specifically, not specifically about book 2, but hopefully that we will get book 2 sooner rather than later. The next one could also compete for my favorite book cover. Top 10 favorite book covers, fantasy book covers that I own at least. And anyways, the book title that is here is going to be Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. Again, just without knowing the story. I don't think the title fits the story perfectly. It does. don't get me wrong, it does play into the story, but you kind of lose sight of what that title is trying to suggest as you continue through the story. But I think that the book itself, or the title itself, is very powerful, very evocative title, and it makes you think, what is this war that they're trying to break? Or is it break out into war, or break the war from happening, stop the war from happening? And so it leaves you questioning a little bit, but I do think it's a great title. Next we've got Howl's Moving Castle, and I didn't really rank these that much, but I tried to a little bit. Anyways, Howl's Moving Castle, it immediately evokes a sense of wonder as you read this title. Howl's Moving Castle. It's that whimsy, that wonder that children's fantasy is supposed to be, or YA or middle grade fantasy is supposed to be, and that's all that I get from this title is Howl's Moving Castle. It's got a castle. I like castles. The castle is somehow moving. I don't know how, and then obviously the castle belongs to someone, and just all the different pieces kind of go together and make me love the title. It doesn't have alliteration, but for some reason my brain tells me that it does, even though howls and moving and castle don't start with the same sound at all. So it doesn't rhyme, it doesn't have any alliteration, but it flows really well, and I just really like the title. Next one we have The Voyage of the Dawn Treader by C.S. Lewis. Again, there's one, The Voyage of the Basilisk, that is I think that's a good book title. I don't think it's as good as The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. I think Dawn Treader itself is a great name for a boat, and so sticking that in the title and then The Voyage of, and once you read this book and you can see how much of a voyage it is, the title just fits so well, and I think it's a good title as it is. So anyways, we will go with that. Next we have The Sum of All Men. Unfortunately, most of the editions now just have it titled The Rune Lords as Book 1, but Book 1, much like Mistborn, which is the first book in the Mistborn series, is titled The Final Empire. Much like with that, we call it Mistborn. Mistborn is the first book. Rune Lords is the first book, but the actual title is The Sum of All Men. And I think that's a really good title. It plays in so much into what this story is about and what the first arc of the series is all about, and even to some degree the second arc of this series. And I really love this title, and I think it's one that most people don't think about because all you get is the Rune Lords, which Rune Lords itself is an interesting title that would go more in series titles, and maybe eventually I'll do a series title, top 10 series title list or something like that. But as far as The Sum of All Men as the book title goes, I think that's a great book title. I think The Sum of All Men, what exactly does that mean? How do you become the sum of all men, or what is the sum of all men? Is this, obviously sum is a mathematical terminology, but what all does it mean? What all are you saying by the sum of all men? Is this a person? Is this a thing? Is this an object? Is it an idea? Who knows what it is? And there is a questioning that comes with this book title, and I like it. I think it's great. Number 3, I have Tress of the Emerald Sea. So I really, again, Emerald Sea, you automatically have me sold, because why is the sea green? I want to know that. And of course, when you read the book, that helps too. But Tress of the Emerald Sea, I think, is a great book title. Specifically though, when you so the Emerald Sea, it obviously makes me like it, but then Tress. I really like characters with T names, things like Tress or Triss, which is one of the Redwall books. Anything that's similar to that, I'm predisposed to like that character name, and I don't know why. I mean, I have an idea why, but anyways, I think that it's just that added with the Emerald Sea, Tress and the Emerald Sea, Tress of the Emerald Sea. I like it. I think it's a great title. I don't really need to explain why I like a title, but it's fun, so I'm doing it. In number 2, and this is eventually maybe I will do a book where I picked the book up because of the title of the book, a video talking about the books that I picked up because of the titles of the book, and this is one of those books, and number 1 is also one of those books. But number 2 is A Natural History of Dragons by Marie Brennan. Natural History of Dragons just sucks me in so fast because it makes me think that it's going to be a scientific paper, or like a scientific essay exploring the anatomy of dragons, or the natural history of dragons at least, and that just makes me want to read the book so bad. The book isn't that, by the way. It's a memoir of a fictional character. It's a great book, but the title is better. The title makes me think of something that it's not, and I do love the book, and I love the cover. I think the cover art is gorgeous. This is Todd Lockwood, I believe. Yes, cover art by Todd Lockwood. I think he's a great cover artist and he does some fantastic dragons. But just the whole idea of a natural history of dragons and treating dragons not as magical, mythical beings, but as just natural parts of the world that haven't been studied yet, and that's what this book is all about. So I like seeing that as well. But the idea behind the title, A Natural History of Dragons, I just automatically, I love the title. And then number 1 on this list is, it's a mouthful of a series, kind of. I didn't put it on it because it's more sci-fi than fantasy, but kind of like The Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England. I think that's a great title. Nobody else agrees with me, but I think it's a great title, and it's so fun, and it's a mouthful. But this is not that book. That's more sci-fi, even though Sanderson can't actually write sci-fi because it always turns into fantasy. But that being said, we're going to look at my number 1 book, which is On the Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness by Andrew Peterson. This is just a very, well, for one, Andrew Peterson is a musician, a singer and a songwriter, and you can tell when you read his books, he's got a very lyrical writing style. And then you read the title, On the Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness, and it's just a very musical title. It's very clearly very middle grade. I'm not denying that. In fact, all the books in this series have great titles. The book 2 is North or Be Eaten. Book 3 is The Monster in the Hollows, and book 4 is The Warden and the Wolf King. All fantastic titles. But On the Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness, this is a book that I have heard about, or I've heard the title of, for years and years, and I don't even know when I first heard the title of this book. But I loved that title. That title alone made me, okay, I've got to read this book, because I don't know what's on the edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness. I don't even know what the Dark Sea of Darkness is, but if there's something on the edge of it, I want to know what that is. And so it just automatically, it draws me in so much, and I just love this book title. I like the book 2. I think book 2 of the series is my favorite of the series. But I did love book 1 as well. Not book 2 too. I'm gonna quit while I'm ahead now, and anyways, that is my list of top 10 fantasy book titles, with various modifications or restrictions to what I can put on the list, mainly being having read and physically own the books. And so that is my list. I hope you guys enjoy this. This was kind of just a fun video for me. I was trying to figure out a Thursday video to come up with, and this was popped into my mind. I was like, that sounds fun. That sounds just like a fun video to do, and so I wanted to do it. It's not really recommending the books. I do recommend every single one of these books, but it was a fun video for me to film, a fun idea for me to come up with, just because I got to explore some fantasy book titles. If I were to open it up to all across the board, I don't think I could limit it to 10. And that's really hard. But anyways, thank you guys for watching an Erudite Adventurer. We post videos every Monday and Thursday, as well as lots of other days at the moment. We will see you guys again soon. Stay well.